Hey everybody, it is in the morning. I'm not fishing. I just got out of bed. It is another fishing podcast number 2. Greg, how are you doing? Because we're not normally up this early just for work.
I've got my orange juice. I need orange juice in the morning. I don't drink coffee. I don't know. I'm weird.
That's all right. Just fuel your mind. I just need you to be in focus today. We have important problems to solve, and let's get this done.
Let's wake up, man. Let's do it.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
Well, my friend Pete, I don't know, we want to talk about timely stuff on this podcast, right? And we just came through one of the most amazing weeks, just in the nation's history, I would say.
It's a memorable one. It's a fun thing to navigate with children too. Let me tell you.
Yeah. I feel for you. I don't have children, but I gotta tell you this. 2020 now coming into 2021, dude. I never thought that I would be living through a time period like this, I must say.
Right. And the irony is it seems like the beast has been stoked by the social media that we're trying to make our living on currently.
I'll say this. I'm a news junkie and I follow politics quite closely. I'm not super close, but probably closer than maybe the average person, I'd say. I don't know. But so here's what concerns me. We're not gonna get too into things here because we are a fishing podcast. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. I kind of feel like we should talk about whatever we want to talk about, honestly. And so maybe we will. I'm just kind of feeling things out right now. Is kind of where I'm going with this. But I am of the opinion. I have friends on each end of the political spectrum, okay? I have a lot of friends that are Trump supporters, and I love them, okay? I would many of them I would risk my life for, and they would do the same for me.
Right.
And where I think, and I'm going to be honest with you, and I think I'm a conspiracy theorist, okay? And that word has been it's been used to really, I guess. I'm not fully functioning right yet, Pete, and this is a really kind of delicate subject that we're sort of tackling here a bit. So
I've never witnessed you fully functioning, so I would just keep trucking along.
Okay, so the important part is I'm trying here. But I think as a conspiracy theorist, there are forces, okay, that are, and when I say forces, we're talking about the most powerful interest in the world here that have more control than I think people really realize. And I'm very suspicious of everything that's happening this year. And the last year, okay? There's politics, very powerful people in D.C. and just the power structures, without getting too deep here, they want to divide people. I really feel this way, okay? And what concerns me right now is that this power structure, that's probably the best way to explain it right now without getting fully down the rabbit hole. But they want to divide people. I'm concerned that they're trying to divide neighbor upon neighbor right now. It certainly feels like I'd never thought this country, there was a possibility for a civil war. I always thought that was ridiculous, but it certainly feels very odd right now. It feels like there's pitting neighbor against neighbor, and that, I'm telling you right now, is a bunch of bullshit. Don't fall into it. Love your neighbor.
Yeah, divisiveness is really the enemy here. If there's one thing that's true about all of this, it's like and everyone's kind of keeps saying this, like it's split right down the middle, and everybody is so hardcore to one side or the other. And I honestly don't see a smooth way out of this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you get from point A to point B and try and bring everybody together. But it is really disastrous to see. That's part of the reason I have trouble like jumping on Facebook and kind of checking in to see what's going on. Besides like the bad information, and everybody has their own information, which is so exhausting. Well, look what I'm going to send you this link. You send me this link, and you know what I mean. It turns into this endless debate that's going nowhere. And then it always finishes with people just swearing at each other and giving each other a finger, but they're not really doing that. They're typing into a computer from a remote location, and they have that sort of bravado that you get on social media. And it seems to be accelerating the pace of, it's bringing down people's intelligence, and it's lessening their ability to sort of relate to other people and then understand somebody else's viewpoint in a real way. Like the days of just having a beer and talking it out seem to be over. Now, if you're having a beer and you bring up this kind of thing, you're probably going to end up in the parking lot, throwing punches, which is a terrible sort of trajectory that we're going on here. I mean, and the bottom line is we still got it better than most places in the world. Obviously, no government is perfect, especially when it gets this big. But if you look around the world, I mean, it's not all peachy everywhere. Everyone's got their own, everyone's got ups and downs and positives and negatives. But I'm with you on that one. Like turning divisiveness seems to be like the poison that's in the water right now.
Yeah, and I really feel like there's an ulterior motive going on there. There's and again, we don't need to go into it right now. It sounds like
you're fishing for something.
I'm really actually not. I don't. I mean, because I can go. Well, I mean,
it's a fishing podcast, so technically you're staying on point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I'm kind of testing the waters. Is that also kind of sort of?
Oh my God! See, you're waking up now. Look at you.
Yeah, I'm on fire.
You got a twinkle in your eye that OJ finally made it to your liver.
Yes. Thank you, OJ. Orange juice, not OJ Simpson. What we're
trying to say is love one another. It's not that hard. My God.
It's not that hard. And
look out for your neighbor. Yeah, maybe you don't agree with them, but look out for them. That goes worldwide. That's just not in this country, but apparently we have to start here first.
Well, I'll tell you. So just say a few other things here, and then we'll move on. But so I'm not a Trump.
You just came blazing out of the gates this morning. Just like
I gotta wake up, man. I gotta wake up. But so I'm not a Trump supporter, right? But I also don't believe he's the Antichrist like so many people do, and how his whole term, like, it's like impeach, and everybody, I'm personally of the opinion where I think there's been worse politicians, that we've had that have done worse with wars and whatnot, and I'm just. I'm not a fan of a lot of the power structure in D.C. To me, there's a lot of evil that's taken place there, and right. it didn't just happen when Trump came in office. I think if people think that, they're not looking into their history very, very well. And that's a really stupid way to say it, but they historically they're wrong. Okay. Historically speaking. So what is particularly concerning to me right now, and I'm on social media, I follow kind of like political stuff on Twitter more than anything. People that are guys like Glenn Greenwald that broke like the Edward Snowden story. I want to find people that are really questioning government, that are trustworthy, good reporters, good journalism. I'm not looking for like fringe stuff. I want people that are credible, right? But are kind of reporting in the more alternative genre of things, okay? And what's particularly concerning to me right now is that they're calling what happened on the Capitol a domestic terrorist incident, right? And let me tell you something. That's really chilling to me, because if we're going to call that a domestic terrorist event, first of all, the only person that was actually shot was a Trump supporter, okay? And with all of those people that made it into the building, all of them, okay? We're calling them domestic terrorists right now. All of those people that were in the building, they could have taken gas cans in there, doused the whole place, lit it on fire. There could have been someone with a bomb in there, blown the whole thing to hell, right? I mean, let's be honest here. And then all of a sudden, after that happens, now they're taking people off of social media that have dissenting voices, like just that question the official narrative. Dude, that is chilling to me. That's all I'm going to say about it.
All right, now on to fishing.
Lord.
Jeez.
Okay. Because here's the thing. Here's what I believe.
Oh, so you're not. That's not all you're going to say.
I guess this is it. This is it. Then this is my conclusionary. I don't know. My conclusive statement.
We can make up words. Yeah, just put it out there.
There are people that have in power, very powerful people, okay, that have an agenda. And again, I'm not going to go into it here. We're talking fishing. But what's going on is freaking me out, man. Okay, thank you, Pete. Maybe we move on.
You need to get out on the water, man. It sucks you can't launch that boat right now. You got all that ice.
Well, I got news for you. So this is us transitioning to another topic.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a segue. What do you got? Speaking of conspiracies,
I got my boat back.
Oh no! See, there might be a Bass Pro conspiracy here.
No, so I actually got my boat back yesterday. And
what are the nuts and bolts of it?
So right, that nice one.
Thank you.
So it sounds like it sounds like it was an issue with the hose. Okay, so if you're just joining, haven't heard this story, you're just joining the podcast here. I just bought a boat recently, brand new 2021 Tracker Targa V18 walkthrough. And it had a leak somewhere. There's too much water coming out of the boat when I pulled the boat plug at the end of the day. So I took it into the Cabela's service center, not far from me. They've had it for like 2 weeks, and I got it back yesterday. They're saying that it was like the hose going into the live well pump, because there's hoses that come, basically go to the outside of the boat that come in. Am I making any sense?
Yeah.
And so that water can come in freely, right? It's just always in there. And so that hose to the live well pump, there wasn't a solid seal there, and it was leaking into the
just a hose clamp.
It was just basically is my understanding. So
and that's kind of what they alluded to. Did they ever explain why you had nuts and bolts laying freely in the?
No, they did not explain it, but I checked the hole very well, and there's still it looked to be like some, I don't know, it looked like there was foam or something. That's, that they weren't able. Now there's foam I need to get rid of in there.
They just put something in there.
I didn't see any bolts or anything.
They just put something in there to obstruct you from feeling the nuts and bolts. Now you just feel something else.
I feel dead inside.
Well, it's good to hear you have the boat back, but it sure would be nice if you could actually get on it. But
no. So yeah, it's basically it's ready to go, and I actually took some pictures of it. I should send that to. Yeah, I don't know. I should have been prepared and posted it right now. I could have, because it looked like, so this whole week it's been really weird. We've had this, it's been like foggy all week. Have you ever experienced a winter quite like this, where it's like you've had a whole week where it's been foggy?
We're locked in inversion.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Yeah, but it never happens in January. But the hoarfrost has been amazing.
Did you call it a hoarfrost?
Hoarfrost. That's what it's called. You know that white stuff you get on the trees?
It's called a hoarfrost?
It's called not a hoarfrost. It's called hoarfrost.
And how do you spell that?
I think it's H-O-R-E or H-O-A-R. I'm not sure. There's no W. That's where you're going.
All right. Sorry. No,
But yeah, it's called hoarfrost. So like we woke, like after we did the podcast last week, I was going to bed and I looked outside and that was right when it started. And it was thick fog. And that was actually why I delayed the podcast, because I'm like, we're going to head down to Forestville for a hike, because I knew it was going to be incredibly beautiful down there. And we got down there and the sun had just come out and there's no wind, and it was just like a winter wonderland. I mean, it's been kind of spectacular, but January's kind of been awesome. I forgot my coat when I went to work yesterday, and it didn't really make any difference. That shouldn't happen. This is the coldest week in the United States and the coldest spot in the United States.
Yeah.
And we're somehow avoiding. I mean, I went trout fishing on Wednesday, and there was no ice on any creek anywhere. You usually get shelf ice, or if it's sort of a slow hole, you might see some ice sort of building up on the shores. There was nothing. It was too much vegetation. Like I couldn't even, run a lure through a lot of these streams because there was so much grass. It was crazy. Bright green grass. There was hatches while I was out there. I had bugs flying around my head,
I want to get into that, just the how your trout fishing went down there. But let me just finish this point because I got off on this tangent of the fog and everything, and it's just making the trees just frost, and it's beautiful out. It's like the most beautiful winter we're having right now. So I was bringing my boat back after it got fixed. Hopefully, of course, I won't really know until I put this thing in the water. But so I was coming back home, and I was like, I want to take a picture of this thing, in front of these beautiful trees with all this frost on them. So I actually did that. You always got to be thinking about social media too, and Instagram, Pete.
Your new supermodel that you pull behind your truck.
Yeah, my 95 Chevy Silverado,
That's got quite a combo. I never stepped back and sort of observed both of those in tandem. I didn't even think about that. I was just looking at your boat.
Yeah, and I really like the last time I'm kind of a little nervous that it's that old of a truck. But if you look, there's a lot of like that year, that Chevy Silverado, that 95 around that mid 90. There's a ton of them on the road.
They're everywhere. It's crazy.
And that, like, my truck. I mean, I kind of was like, after a while, when we were, that was the first time when we went down to the St. Croix that I really pulled it, that far for that, length of time or whatever. And so my truck with the boat. So I really was kind of like testing it out, and I'm like, dude, this thing's fine. My truck can handle it. It's got a big block V8.
Oh, it's built for pulling that.
Yeah, for sure.
The only knock is it's a quarter century old, so you just never know what you got from day to day. But seems like she's been doing what she's been doing for as long as she's been doing it. So
yeah, so I've kind of I guess after that last trip, and really just I was like, wow, she's gonna be fine with this boat,
Yeah.
So that was.
Yeah, you encouraged me to bring an extra hitch when I showed up. I was like, oh, he's got truck concerns.
Yeah, and now I think I was just being probably just a little paranoid, and there's no reason The truck's had no issues,
Yeah, and it is, but having a boat, which you haven't had for a while, but you understand what goes on with it. If there isn't something going wrong with the boat, there's something going wrong with the trailer or the vehicle that pulls the boat. It's a nonstop inevitability,
Yeah.
When you lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I brought my boat down there, which was a really, like, looking back on it, I don't even remember what there you go. I don't even remember what I was pulling the boat with. It must have been a piece of crap car. But it's a
RAV4?
I think it might even been before the RAV4. It could have been, though. I mean, a terrible car, the boat and the trailer is terrible. It always has been. The bearings were always like, I don't remember how many times I've melted through my bearings. And, I drove that thing 1,200 miles, and I get to Oklahoma, and I'm like 45 minutes outside of Tulsa on whatever that freeway is that runs east and west. That's the busiest road I've ever been on in my life, and it's all
that's 90.
Yeah, it's what?
Interstate 90, I think.
No, it's east to west down there.
I mean 40. 44?
40, right.
44.
And, of course, a tire goes out on the trailer. And I've got a spare tire, but I've never changed a tire on a trailer. But I had one of those jacks where you have to sort of roll up on it, and it rolls the trailer up in the air. And then, of course, it's on the freeway side. So I've got like a foot and a half between me and the white line. And there's trucks going by at 75, 80 miles an hour, like boom, boom, boom. And every time one comes through, the air is like pushing me into my wheel. And I'm trying to crank. And I'm on a flip phone with you. And I'm just like, what am I doing? But I got there and we got to go fishing. But it's amazing what I'll do to get a boat in the water, but you just have to expect things to go wrong and not let them get you down. At some point, you're going to get stuck on the side of the road. You're just going to have to figure it out, but you can't let that slow you down. You just got to go for it and, expect the worst and hope for the best,
Well, that's interesting because I forgot. You just reminded me that I actually don't have a spare tire.
That's a good one.
I don't have a spare tire for the trailer. The
trailer has 4 tires, right?
Yes, the trailer has 4 tires, but I'm pretty sure that if one of them goes, it's a tandem axle trailer. I'm pretty sure if one of them goes, you still have to pull over.
That's true. You should look into that, though. You could probably get somewhere with 3 wheels, At least you won't be totally dead in the water. But I don't know. That's something you probably want to find out. But yeah, spare tire is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty...
And another thing, too, spare tire advice. I always had a spare tire in the front of my boat, and I just didn't have a cover on it, which I was like, well, what do I care? Well, what happens to those tires? They just sit in the sun and cook until they crack, and then they're totally non-functioning. So a tire cover is not just for making your boat look better, but the tire will actually just fall apart while sitting there not being used. So I highly recommend a good tire cover.
Good to know. Good to know.
I was actually in a position with a flat tire and a flat spare once. I don't even remember the scenario. I've had so many problems with my boat / car while trying to fish. I'm just like, I don't even care anymore. I'm just like, so it goes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Well, we were starting the conversation of, you fishing. So you actually, I haven't fished in a while. I got to get with the program here. But you actually, this week, you went fishing down in southeastern Minnesota.
Yeah.
So just kind of like, so if people, especially like in this area from Minnesota or whatever, if they don't know that what's going on down there, just kind of set that up a little bit and explain too, just kind of the seasons, because that's a pretty unique thing. And then also, it's kind of interesting, the outdoor news this week, the outdoor news
the Bible.
Newspaper, they've actually got a, and I'm showing it here for the camera, they've actually got an article on winter trout fishing down there.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Well, I will say,
yeah.
Winter trout fishing is, especially in January, sort of pushed into by desperation a little bit. But, I mean, you can make that argument for ice fishing also, I guess. The fabulous part about it is just being outside. So trout fishing closes, I think it's mid-October now. But it doesn't permanently close because you can fish in state parks or within city limits 365 days a year. This is something that fishermen, fly fishermen, and trout fishermen battled for the last 5 or 6 years with the DNR. A lot of the same way catfish guys are battling for 2 lines or, catching their own live bait, all that stuff. Because it didn't make any sense. It's like, well, why are we closing the season? All these guys just want to catch and release fish. They don't want to, make an impact on it. They just want to be out there. So the DNR finally came to a conclusion. All right, you can be out there, but we don't want anyone to get shot because you're kind of overlapping with a lot of hunting starting in mid-October. So you have access to the state parks or the cities like Chatfield, Spring Valley, Lanesboro, Preston. They all have great fishing right in the city, which is kind of cool. And so now they keep it that way until January 1st. When January 1st kicks in, they open the season. Everything's back open again. That's only southeastern Minnesota. That doesn't count in northeastern Minnesota. It won't make any difference anyway because they get solid ice up there because they don't have all the springs. And you can start fishing if you want. So if you get a day that is, not windy, sunshine is a big helper, and over 25, 30 degrees helps, you can go out there and you can fish. And if there's not much snow, that really helps too, because you're doing a lot of hiking when you're trout fishing. But if you can get in the water with waders on, and I brought, like this year, I'm using my heated socks. It was so fabulous out there. Like, waders keep you warmer than you realize. You're up to your chest covered. And just put on a decent jacket and a stocking hat. And I got fishing gloves so you can flip open your mittens and use your fingers to tie on, tie off, or whatever. And I ended up with 3 or 4 fish on that day, never got one in, which is rare. I think part of the problem was it was mid-January, but, those trout don't really do anything different except sort of, I think, eat less just because like everything else is just a little bit more suppressed. So the fish are active. They're all over the place. I was seeing them by the hundreds, but it's just not like one of those warm summer days where, they're completely flipped on. And you can fly fish for them. If it's too cold, that's a cold way to fish because your hands get wet. You're always dealing with wet line. And there's not a lot of hatches, so you kind of trying to figure out what you can talk a fish into. And that day I was spinner fishing, but the real beauty of it is just parking your car and walking back into the woods, following these streams, and then working your way down the stream. Just hearing running water in the middle of January is such a steal. There's years where there's so much snow I can't even get to a stream, and then I end up waiting till March. And you're trying to fish before the melt starts, because as soon as the melt starts, everything is blowing up for 3 or 4 weeks. Sometimes less, sometimes more. So it's been a real blessing just to be able to get outside and open water fish. And for me, that's always been the bridge to ice fishing. I'm always waiting until there's good ice, and trout fishing keeps me sane. It's almost just like a hike where you bring a fishing pole and then, a fish is a bonus. But I highly recommend it. If you've never done it before, it's catch and release fishing. It's artificial lures only, but it's a perfect way to get outside in the heart of a Minnesota winter, especially in a year like this where you think you're slowly losing your mind watching the news all day.
Right. So what presentations do you, I know pretty much what we do, but just for people that maybe might want to try this sometime.
Yeah, and we have some videos up on YouTube. I don't know what's where anymore, but I'm using number 3 Blue Fox spinners for the most part, pinching the barbs. I just want something that casts good, so I've got an ultralight rig. The further you can cast, the better, especially in the winter when the streams are low and really, really clear. Everything's really easily spooked. So you're trying to get a long cast in there. You're usually catching a fish in the first 2 or 3 feet after that thing hits the water. It's Blue Foxes, gold or silver, and just get out there and walk upstream. You got to be walking up behind those fish, and they're all pointing upstream. And there's not a lot of science to it. You're just sort of taking your time and trying to make smart casts. If you get a snag, as you well know, you got to walk into the hole that you wished you were fishing. So it comes down to making good casts and not, throwing into the trees or the weeds. There's a lot less of them this time of year. But the place I went to normally has weeds that are 6 or 8 feet high. It's completely impenetrable. And right now you can walk directly through the grass. I mean, it's like you just follow the deer tracks and it takes you wherever you want to go. It's pretty fabulous. But and when I'm fly fishing, it's just light as you can go. A blue-winged olive is like the traditional fly people use down here for almost everything. It's a tiny, tiny fly. You can almost not see it, especially me these days. I embarrassingly, Greg, I have a magnifying glass that clips to the brim of my hat now.
Oh boy.
Because I don't want to wear glasses on the stream. I always have contacts in so I can wear shades.
It wasn't from that one time that I blinded you with my production lights, was it?
No, it's just old guy. So so I've got this magnifying glass that you can flip up and flip down. I'm close to the bifocals. I mean, bifocals I'm going to be wearing over my contacts because you can't tie, like a 2-pound test leader to a fly with my eyes anymore. It's just so frustrating, Yeah, so if you snag a weed and bust a fly off, you're like, all right, well, in 45 minutes, I'll be able to resume this fishing situation. It's literally come down to that. I'm sitting on the bank. I'm setting things out. I'm trying to figure out how to, so then it becomes like precision casting becomes huge just because your eyes don't allow you. You burn so much time retying that it's not worth it anymore,
Well, I mean, I think it's important just that we come to terms, with our, our mortality. We are getting older, and this is how it happens, dude. Like, legitimately, this is how it happens. Remember when you're a kid, you're like, what happens with old people? When does that transition occur when things really start heading on more of a downward slope? And also, when do they become so out of touch? And I really feel like I'm in that part right now, probably the beginning stages of it. Like I don't know if I'm slowing down necessarily as far as physically, or my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. I noticed maybe a little bit. They seem more strained, I guess, especially at night driving. But more than
But you don't wear
anything, I just
contact.
realize how out of touch I'm getting, like with pop culture and like what kids are doing. I'm honestly, I've seen what kids are doing. Kids, anybody younger than me is a kid, basically. But I'm like,
You went into
it's like
late
another
30s.
language and I totally get it now. It's like what the youth are doing is some of the music. I'm like, speaking of music, before I forget this, have you ever listened to The Weeknd, dude? You know who The Weeknd is?
Yeah, he's a Super Bowl halftime show.
Well, I have gotten to like listen to more of his music, and I mean, we're both children of the '80s,
Yeah.
and that's a dude where, okay, as far as like, I don't feel out of touch at all listening to that guy because I'm like, this guy is playing '80s music.
Yeah,
dude,
he's
his voice
recycling
sounds
my
like
youth.
he sounds like he's Michael Jackson. His voice, and then it's like his music is like the greatest. Elements of songs from the 80s just wrung out and then just collected in a cup. That's like what his music... Dude, he has like this... he's got a song that I heard recently. It's got this huge saxophone solo in it. A saxophone solo. Dude, it was crazy.
That's
I'm
great
not
that you
even
feel-
kidding you.
That's great that you feel hip because somebody's recycling the music of when you were young a million years ago.
It's totally what they're doing, but they're really good at it. I'm like, oh, it's so funny because generationally, like this new generation, they have no. I mean, they know about the '80s now, but it's kind of like they don't realize that they're just being the same formula is being used on them, and it works so well in the '80s. Well, let's just do it again. You know, why the hell do we?
I have it on all day at work. Like anyone that comes in the store is listening to 80s right up the middle. And the kids that work there are just like, ugh. I'm just like, shut up, learn something, all right?
Right.
Part of the reason is like it's perfect work music because it cheers me up, you know?
Yeah,
It's like
sure.
me at the 10-year-old Pete at the swimming pool, every song, you know?
Hall and Oates, man. I mean, it's just, it does something. I mean, and it's not just, obviously, it's not just if you live through that time period. There's something about that music. It's just like, it's very uplifting. It builds. It's like, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. It's like, yeah, it's like, and claps.
Yeah, right. Everybody's got that, you know, that musical moment where their life was perfect and they weren't saddled with stress in the world. And, you know, whatever your sweet spot is, you can always go back to it and it takes you right back to that place. That's the best part of music. You know?
Yeah, that's what it is for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So is there anything else you want to add to the trout discussion?
Nothing really. But do know
This is what I wanted to say. I before I forget. So that deal too. When we first started doing it when we were kids, you know, the trout deal was, we thought, okay, it has to be ultralight. You know, it has to be like 4-pound test, ultralight rods, short rods. That's really not the thing down there. You want to have actually a longer rod. I'd say what, 6.5 foot.
6.5.
Maybe even a medium light might even be better than an ultralight. You know, or a light or a medium light, you can get, I think, better distance with it, and it's better with those, because you use actually big spinners. I think people would be kind of surprised how big a spinners you use.
Well, I'm in the mode of looking for bigger fish too over time. You know, I used to go out and catch 100 fish a day, and it was fun, but it's like you don't want to catch all these little fish all day. It's not good for them. And I'm willing to catch 10 big fish now versus catching a bunch of little fish all day. But I would like to file a reel complaint. We've had this discussion before. I've got a Shimano reel that was probably, I don't even remember what it cost, $150 or something. I don't even remember what. All their names are crazy, like Marvel superheroes now. But it failed all day for me.
So this was a Shimano.
Yeah, so the way it was failing was...
And it's a new reel?
It's a new reel, brand new. I bought it in the middle of the summer. So when you make a long cast on the trout stream, you want that bail to flip, and you want to be reeling before the lure hits the water. That's because it's all limestone, and spinners will fall between rocks, and if you have to walk up to get your stuck spinner, you have to walk through a hole. So as soon as that spinner, before it's entering the water, you're already pulling it back. So when it lands, it's moving, because then it doesn't just do a straight dive to the bottom. this reel, every single time I would start reeling and it would do that bail flip where it gets halfway across and just stays open and spins.
Oh, man.
So I probably snagged, I don't know, 6 or 7 spots just because of the reel. So then I was trying to flip the bail manually while the lure is in the air. If you can imagine the logistics of that with mittens on.
Dude.
I was so frustrated. So I literally yesterday got online and started looking at Daiwas. It's kind of hard right now because I don't feel like going to a store and shopping for reels, you know. But I bought a Daiwa in the same price range. It was like $150. And there, by the way, there's Daiwas that cost like $700. Every reel company does this.
Yes.
You know, we're gonna have our Rolls-Royce reel, and I don't understand how you can go from the $150 reel to the $600 reel.
Makes no sense.
Like, this is,
dude. Those are here's the reality. Those are the guys that I've fished with these guys before. A lot of times, it's just very wealthy. I mean, you got to be very wealthy, right?
Right.
But you're exactly right. There's a reel in many ways it's not that complex, really. You know,
right,
it's really not complex. It's just a turning a handle. You need some lubrication in there. There's some gears, but there isn't any electronics or some of these reels have it now, but that's nonsense, really. I mean, I think that's the ultimate. A $700 reel or whatever they are is.
It's the downfall of society. And the other thing is, like, you get the crazy metal alloys, or things get lighter and get smoother, whatever. There's no way that 750. Like, I'm hard in my reels, especially when I'm out doing that style of fishing, because I'm falling over and getting wet, and there's dirt getting in the reel, whatever. I would wreck that expensive reel as quickly as I would wreck a cheap one. But right. I'm curious as to what you think. Shimano always used to be my number one reel.
Me too.
And I still have Shimanos I love, especially older ones for some reason. I don't know why that's changing. But, like, what's your number 2 go-to spinning reel brand?
I don't know.
On tackle warehouses, and there was a dozen brands. 6 of them I weren't even familiar with,
Yeah.
And Dial was the only other one I know, and I have a couple of
Did you say
Dial
I weren't
ones.
familiar with? I listened back to our last podcast, and I'm super critical. I'm like, what did I just say right there? I said, what?
It doesn't matter.
I'm like, I'm not going to be listening to these podcasts anymore.
No,
I'm
why would
super
you listen to this?
critical.
There's no reason to listen to this podcast.
There's no reason.
You're fine.
God, we're terrible.
But what do you
are the worst salesmen, too. You notice that? This is an amazing podcast. What you're listening to right now is the height of audio entertainment.
Yeah, if you're not listening twice, you're shortchanging your life. But what's the brand of Daiwa reels that you have?
Okay, so no, I don't have. So here's the reality. So what you're telling me right now it's official. I have to come to terms with it. Shimano is crap, and Shimano used to be my favorite reel company. I don't know what happened. I have no. Do you remember when I used to talk about how great this Porta-Brace company was? All my bags, right, for video production are Porta-Brace bags.
Yeah.
It's this company out of North Bennington, Vermont. Really, like, their bags, their cases for camera gear. It's like the industry standard, right? I used to sing their praises. Bulletproof, dude. Well, I'm not feeling that way anymore, and it's the same way how I feel about Shimano here. I'll wrap this up quickly. I don't want to go too much of a tangent, but I used to sing the praises of this company. These things were rock solid. These bags, they're the best thing in the world. Well, recently I bought like this one of these bags, right? And the zippered pouch, the zipper doesn't work. And, dude, the customer service in this company is just atrocious. I was shocked. They weren't getting back to me. I'm like, I need to send this back. It's under warranty, whatever. Send it back to them finally. And they sent it back to me. It's supposed to be fixed. The zipper's still messed up, right? Ugh. And I'm like, this is a company that I remember singing the praises of. I think I've talked about it on previous podcasts before, And now it's just like, this company sucks. And I feel that same way about Shimano. Like, I've got a Shimano reel that's doing the same thing, Pete, and you're telling me that's a new reel. That shouldn't be happening, dude. And I hear other people talking about bales, like Shimano bales. It's like, you're making reels, fishing reels, man. And you're having, like, everybody talks about this bale issue.
And if, by the way, if anyone's listening and can post a solution to this, like if there's a dab of oil I should be dropping somewhere, I've tried different things and I haven't had any luck. And I have a dozen Shimano reels. Most of them work pretty good, but it really gets exposed when you're casting, when you need that bail to flip. It's not like you're jigging over the side of the boat. If I'm jigging, I could use that reel just fine, dropping something down, flipping the bail and picking it back up. But it shouldn't do that. So I don't understand what to do all the way. Also, hashtag Daiwa. If you want to send us some gear, it'd be much appreciated. So
well,
the reel
we got to work. We got to work on getting a few more downloads. We don't want to be too pretentious here, Pete.
Well, that's not legit. But the reel I ordered was a Fuego. A Daiwa Fuego.
A Fuego, yeah. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
They run out of names for reels. It gets ridiculous.
Well, they did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that Shimano and putting it on my ice rod, which leads me to some ice fishing questions. If we could.
Well, yeah. For 1 second there, though. But so I don't know where I'm going to go for reels now. You asked that question. What reel? I've heard actually good things about Daiwas. It sounds like Daiwas now have taken the have taken the spot of Shimano as like the premier reel, maybe. So, but that I'd like to hear if there's anybody that has experience with other spinning reels, just reels in general, even bait casters. Like what do you guys think? Like, let us know somehow through our social media, YouTube comments. Let us know because seriously, like I need to know because I need to buy some new reels, I'm like, okay, where should I be spending my money? Because I'm pretty much done. I'm not pretty much. I'm done with Shimano.
Like, I will say
you've sealed the deal for me.
I have a Fluger. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I've heard. I got a buddy that loves Fluger.
I bought one just because it was like the end of the year. They were throwing them out, kind of a thing, and I'm pretty happy with it. I couldn't use it for trout fishing, but it feels like a solid reel. But I'm specifically looking for a good casting reel, so if anyone knows anything, please donate information. I'd be curious to know what's out there. But
so you're talking ice fishing? You're saying?
No, I'm saying just for a quality casting spinning reel. But a spinning reel should do both if you wanted to.
No. What I meant is you had an ice fishing topic you wanted. I was trying to transition. You didn't see my. I was trying to segue there. You didn't see that smooth.
Sorry, that segue just didn't hit me in the face. Maybe I need to turn up your volume. But I don't want to do that. But so I'm going to put that reel into work as a ice fishing reel. So I've been ramping up. We talked about this last week. I'm heading up to the end of the Gunflint on the Ontario border, lake trout season, and I've got a bunch of ice fishing to do. So it's going to be my first foray into ice fishing this year. And like I said last week, I was buying up a lot of gear to get myself light because up there you're not driving on the ice. You are hauling gear in alone with snowshoes, and you got to get as light as possible. So I would like to compliment Eskimo on the ice house I bought. I sent you a picture of this thing. It was a non-insulated 2-person red ice house for $140, and it feels like great quality. I popped it up downstairs. It's got a single door on it, 4 windows, plenty of room inside. You can't quite stand up in it, but I loved it. I'm like, this is perfect. And the best part about it was it weighs 21 pounds, and when you get it back in the bag, it straps on like a backpack with a clip between the straps, which is exactly what I'm looking for because I'm pulling a sled. I'd like to have the house on my back if I could.
Right.
And my ice fishing gear is so light now. I have a tiny ice unit that I use in a canoe.
Let me know how that does too. That fish finder that you have, because I'm curious about it. Primarily, so it's running on AA batteries. Is that right?
Yeah. So like when I go to the Boundary Waters, I'll use it 12 hours a day, and I have to change the batteries once.
Yeah, that is incredible, dude.
It's crazy.
And so I think in ice fishing too, if you use, and you might want to do this because it might, those batteries might go sooner now that it's colder. Yep. Those like Energizer lithium batteries are supposed to be better in cold weather. So
good. That's what I have too.
Try that.
They're lighter. They're lighter, so I'm looking for light everything. So that's kind of fits into that bill. And the one thing about that is I was shooting mine through the canoe floor when I'm using it canoeing.
Wow.
If you put it in a little If you just get an inch of water, if it's sitting in water, whether it's the bottom of your canoe's got water or just a little, we use Gatorade cups for leeches and stuff, you can shoot it right through the canoe and get your reading. And you can do the same thing on the ice with it. If you clear a spot on the ice and get some water there and let that water sort of freeze it to the ice, you can get a reading through the ice. So you don't need to drill a hole. You can stop and sort of look for your spot, you know? So I've got my tiny little fish finder. It's not mounted to anything. It's just going to be sitting there. It's a Fish Tracks. If anybody wants to check it out, they're under $200.
How do you spell that? Just
FISHTRAX. And I haven't heard about them other than this. I think that's all they do. And my first unit got water under the screen. I sent it back. I had a new one within the week. You know, they didn't even ask any questions. I was like, this is great. So I'm getting down to two. I bought some heavier Abu Garcia rods. That's another thing. If anyone has any ideas on good ice rods, because everything feels so flimsy out there. One thing I don't understand about, because I'm fishing for lake trout, so I'm thinking in a mode of a bigger or a stouter rod, but I don't want to go that sturgeon rod route that we've got. What's a great brand of ice fishing rod? I don't understand the saddles that don't lock your reel in.
There you go.
Do you know what I'm talking about here?
It's just one of the most ridiculous things in ice fishing that they don't have reel seats just built into the rod. I think it's crazy that they're still doing that.
Is there an upside to it, or is it just a way to make the rod sell for less?
I think it's about, the only thing I could figure is it's about keeping maybe the weight down of the whole setup, but to me it's not, come on.
Yeah. Saddles are plastic, you got to put a blank, I guess, in the middle of the cork, and I don't know. So anyway, I bought a couple of Abu Garcia ice rods that are like medium action, but they still feel really flimsy. And I'm always curious if there's a really good stout rod out there. Obviously, you want it to be sensitive, but like I'm going to be fishing with 1 ounce jigs,
Right.
So like a 1 ounce jig on the end of a whippy ice rod, and you're moving it up and down. You're not sitting still. You're dropping it down. You're picking it back up. You're dropping it down. You're picking it back up, because these trout are experts at hitting things when they're moving either direction. They'll hit it on the way down. You won't notice it. You have to be really aware. You have to be basically watching your screen, or they'll hit it on the way up. They're somehow designed to feed on shad or whatever they're feeding on up north there. That's how they operate. They cruise around and hit things that are trying to escape by going up or down. That's their mouth is built for that somehow. I would love to see it in action, but I learned this when I was fishing for them in the summer.
Nice.
And the other thing is, so I don't know rod-wise where to go with it. But I definitely, like I said, I have an Abu Garcia. I have those for catfish reels, but I don't know anything about ice rods or who makes great. I'm not looking for an overpriced rod. I'm looking for something I don't have to be too worried about. But I got my light Eskimo. I got my new rods.
Let me know how. I really am curious on how you like that Eskimo. The quality control.
Yeah.
All just. Let me know how it lasts for you, because
it feels really good. Even though it's not insulated, it is a dense, thick material. I just thought it would be like a raincoat material for $140, It's not. You could never tear it with your hands, no matter how hard you tried,
Okay.
And it's that same design as a clam. It's a 60-second setup, just bang, 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 throw a couple ice anchors in. My clam, I have one of those big ice fishing escapes. That's a monster, and it's really hard to heat, and it's already ripped in one of the corners. I bought the insulated floor for it. It doesn't fit with the model I have, which is so stupid. We tried to use that thing. Neither of them you can roll up and fit in any bag with any reasonable skill.
So what just in general, so what has been your experience with clam, with that pop-up? Like now that you've had it now for a while.
Early on,
and I'm talking quality and everything.
Yeah, early on in the marriage, I was like, "This is the greatest thing ever," because I was going from a flip up to a pop up, and I'd never had a pop up before. And early on, it seemed really great. The problem was when you were fishing in 0 temps, everything gets so brittle and hard to roll up, and it's an insulated house on top of that. I mean, it's really heavy. It must be 70 pounds or something, It's got to be in that neighborhood. just like at the end of the night, trying to fit that thing in a bag was just a battle, The zippers broke in cold temperature, not the actual zipper, but the thing you hold the zipper with.
That's my experience with clam.
Yeah, it was so thin. And then I called them and they sent me like strings, like those loops you can attach to your zippers or whatever. But I need to find someone to fix this rip. The rip on my clam is where the poles meet the walls. There's a lot of pressure in those corners, which I suppose can happen in any ice house. But it just felt cheap. The zipper on the bag broke, like the actual zipper, and I mean, it was fine. Like I said early on, I was like, wow, this is great, but it is too big unless you got a couple of heaters if it's really cold. But the frustrating part was it felt like the quality just wasn't there. People got gung-ho crazy about clam there for a while, and I didn't know anything.
I'm not shocked by anything you're saying right now, just for the record.
And Eskimo is a Wisconsin company. I don't know where they're having their stuff made. It's probably overseas because what isn't anymore,
Yeah.
But so far, so good. I think it's, fantastic the way it feels.
I just want to, to me, I hear a lot of good stuff about otter. I have no experience with otter. I've had issues with clams, some of clam stuff. And I'm curious. I have zero experience with Eskimo. So I'm curious how your experience is going to be with them. And I just want, I want to know who's making the best stuff. And I want to stay away from the people not making good stuff,
They should get credit for it. I did buy the last small purchase I made was the Otter sled, which is tiny. It's maybe 1.5 feet wide by, I think it's 44 inches long. So I have a tiny sled now, and I got my house on my back. And the biggest thing, I'm just going to have a tackle box. Basically, I can fit everything but the rods in a backpack. And then I've got the ion auger, which I refuse to not bring with.
Right.
I'm not going to go up there and hand, especially when I'm fishing blind. I don't know what I'm doing. I do have a guide for one day. I got a snowmobile one day. I have a dog sled rented.
Yeah, you said that.
So how cool is that going to be? But
very cool. You need to try every, I don't want to ruin your trip, you having to document it, but it would be really cool if you can document it.
Oh, I will. I will. The frustrating part was I had that GoPro on when I went out fishing just to try it out, and I loved the GoPro. I just couldn't find any fish.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so great having the touchscreen on those new GoPros, and everything was slick. I have that extra unit that fits around it, so it's got a mic on it. It sounds amazing.
Nice.
And then I bought elbow because I had a chesty on and I had it sitting on my chest.
Yeah.
And it's always awkward how those cords plug in because I've broken the jacks on the GoPros before, and I realized just to get a different cord. So I got a cord that's got an elbow on it, so it plugs in and then sits flush on my chest.
Nice.
So I'm kind of all set up there. All I'm bringing up there is one GoPro and a tripod that holds the camera.
Perfect. Perfect.
That's the beauty of filming while you're ice fishing, and it's so much easier than open water fishing,
Yeah.
It is easy, even trout fishing, just walking around with that thing in your chest, but it's keeping it simple and just making it, simple is better. So you can fish, because if you're not catching fish, all your footage is lost anyway.
Yeah.
But I have another ice fishing topic I'd like to bring.
Okay. Yes.
Get your opinion on. So as I'm buying reels and putting fresh line on, is the idea of ice line just a total scam? way to put this question. Or ice reels? I mean, so because I've heard of guys that just no, I just use my line that I use all year. So you buy this ice line and it's blue. Why do you need a different colored line?
Because it's ice.
Is it? Yeah,
it's marketing. Ice. It's ice.
So
it's ice blue. Blue ice. I don't know.
The way the photons are scattered through the ice. And then I'm sure they did some science on that. But then these spools are 75 feet long. I might be fishing in 120 feet of water.
That ain't gonna cut it, man. No. So they're basically making those little spools. Those are just, when they sell them, they're just because they know, okay, this guy's going to be using just a little reel, little ultralight reel for ice fishing. So those little spools on those little reels, it's just not going to take much line. So you need the real deal, just regular line.
Even when I'm fishing in trout water, I'm fishing in the same temps, that I would be ice fishing just about. It's not like trilene's my go-to line, just regular old-fashioned trilene. It does not seem like it's going to get brittle, or you know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah, I would just say, as far as the trout fishing, just get. I mean, I'm a Berkeley trilene guy. I would just go Berkeley trilene XL. Just that more limper, mono.
Yeah.
Is probably going to be better in the cold.
Right. Because I've had ice lines that if you don't use them for a year, and then when you're fishing, it's so coiled up that a light jig doesn't even straighten the line out. Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm.
It's happened to me more than once, where your line looks like a slinky.
Yeah.
And the jig is so light that you can't even stretch out your own line. And I'm like, what am I using this ice line for? It doesn't even seem like it.
Yeah, that's.
So, and maybe it's because I'm balling the wrong ice line, but I think I'm going to just regular fishing line for all of my ice fishing reels. I think you would be. It's more about the line diameter. About like for ice fishing, you want to use like 2 pound test for panfish. 4 pound to 6 pound, I think, is pretty standard for everything else. And then for, I don't know, you'd probably be fine for lake trout, 8-10 pound test, something like that. I'll probably won't go over 6 on anything and kind of enjoy the battle. But I am considering braid. I don't know if that would make a difference with trout fishing. I know it does in the stream. It does not work. You experienced that when you showed up with fire line one day. Remember that day?
No, that was you.
No, you had fire line.
Did I?
Yeah. I caught fish all day.
Oh, was that? So yeah, it would. God, that sounds like something. I don't.
It's probably happened.
Because I remember that very well, but I thought you did it.
No.
This is just another sign of age here.
I made that
my memory is failing. But no, the whole thing is, I bought. It was. I remember it. It was crystal. It was Fireline crystal.
Right.
It was the translucent, and the whole thing, how they marketed it, was just such garbage. Lord have mercy. Was it the translucent braid or superline?
Yeah.
And dude, it was incredible how the trout were they were terrified of that line in that clear water.
Look at this idiot. Right?
It just showed up. It was like it looked white. It was like white line.
Yeah, you could see the fish like parting as your line was dragging through the water. They're just like, let us move out of the way for this giant barge that's coming down this creek.
As far as that ice line stuff that they're, these companies are, marketing just these specific like ice lines. I think it's probably, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect it's probably mostly marketing. I don't really know if there's that much of a difference in formulation. I mean, I guess there could be, but I feel like they're probably just like reconstituting like a different line that's already out there, and they're going, okay, we're going to call this. This should be good for ice fishing. Let's put it in a different package and market it different. I doubt they're actually making a different formula. I mean, they could be, I guess.
Well, I will have a full report because I'll have the ice lines in my pack because I already have them, and I'm going to all my favorite lines and my ice reels, and I'm using bigger spools so I can get deep, and they're not ice fishing reels. But my biggest question mark is just finding a good ice rod. So, and if people know of good ice lines out there that you recommend and feel that it's better than a normal mono, let us know. I'd be curious to know, but I'm getting very suspicious. Greg, you want to talk about conspiracy theories? Let's get them all night.
So, speaking of conspiracies, I wish you could see my screen what I'm about to drop on you right here, Pete. Okay, I'll move it a little bit there. So there is a fish. So this is from Target Walleye. They help me kind of keep abreast of fishing news around the world here. And so right before I started the podcast, I looked through these Target Walleye emails that I get every week, and also Bass Blaster. It's just it gives me an idea what's kind of happening out there. Brett McComas with Target Walleye is a great guy, and I've talked with him before. He's the one that does Target Walleye, but he finds some interesting stuff. So there's a fish that a guy caught. In fact, I need to bring this up. I'm just going to cover you completely here, Pete, on the screen here. I'll switch my camera so it's not you that I'm covering.
By the way, I haven't watched the videos. I haven't watched the videos, but at any point you could just label me a dumbass with your fancy
Oh,
setup.
I
there,
know.
like a
I know. I haven't. I would never do that. I would never do
But
that.
you could. It'd be kind of funny. Like if I'm making a point you don't agree with, you just put idiot over my forehead.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind. So I'm glad you're okay
Feel free
with that.
to.
I appreciate
I won't be
it.
upset.
So this is from Target Walleye. It's a fish. I've got it up on screen right now. So anybody that is, you need to check it out on our Angling Uploaded YouTube channel if you want to see this. This is quite interesting. There's it looks like a pumpkin seed or some kind of a hybrid sunfish a guy caught. It says, this is from Target Walleye. The dude over at KT Fishing caught a bluegill with some serious uniqueness going on. Said it was fully fluffy like a patch of fur. I'll take a hard pass. So in this picture, there's this hybrid sunfish, I'll call it, that's got like right on its side, kind of towards more the back half of it, by its kind of its dorsal fin. It's got this fur growing, like a patch of fur, like wet fur. It looks like
a mole,
but a big mole. So it looks like this bluegill either had some kind of a sore on it, and then this growth came out of that, or I can't figure out if it had a sore on it first, and then this, I don't know if it's a fungi or algae or something that took advantage of it, or if it's the algae or fungus is actually creating this sore. But in either case, it's very disturbing.
I'm looking at it right now, and that is really disgusting.
I've actually caught bass with that before, but on it. And
it's an open wound. It's not like there's fur on top of the scales. It's like there's a hole in the fish. I don't know what's going on there.
Isn't that wild, dude?
That is wild. What do you think? Do you think old KT fishing threw that one in the frying pan?
I hope not.
Right under it, there's like the three-eyed fish from The Simpsons. Did you see that?
No. Oh yeah, like where it came from?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all Brett McComas. Oh, and by the way, that's very disturbing. Look at that thing. I have no idea what's going on there.
My morning's wrecked. Thank you, man.
But
great.
What do you think that is? Like, what is that? Is it an algae growing? Like, what is that?
It might be like an open wound that sort of maybe algae is sort of what do they call that when two creatures of the wild are working together?
A symbiosis.
It's a symbiotic relationship they have there. The algae is plugging the open wound, or the sunfish herpes. And but the sunfish is surviving because the algae is enjoying the herpes, I guess.
It's like it looks like the sunfish got like a toupee on its side.
It's a really bad toupee. Like you've just missed it entirely. That's disgusting, man.
So here's going back to Target Walleye here. So you know how we've talked in the past about how it's really interesting. You can tell that at one point all the continents were connected, right? By seeing some of the fish that we have here that are very similar. Yeah. They're very like a northern pike. There's pike in Ireland. There's huge pike in Ireland. They look just very similar to the pike we have here.
Right.
Or walleye. Look, they're big walleye in Europe, but they're actually zander and they're a little different. But they look like a walleye. A zander looks like a walleye, but it's from Europe. Well, there's yellow perch there too. Okay, have you seen the yellow perch in Europe? How big they get? Okay, so everything's like Jurassic Park in Europe, though. Like everything's outsized when it goes to Europe.
Right.
And so it's the same. And again, this isn't a yellow perch, but you can see that this is the fish when yellow. What am I trying to say here, Pete? This is a fish. I'm gonna bring it up right now. This is a fish that has ancestry. Ancestry is not the right word. It has a evolutionary history that's related to yellow perch. Like they branched off at some point.
Right, they cross paths.
Yeah, they were one species most likely at one point, and then the continents broke apart, and then they became subspecies, or whatever. But you can tell, like in this picture I've got up, and there's some perspective work in here too. So you got to keep that in mind. This picture, there's some camera trickery here going on, but this is supposedly a 6-pound. And I got to bring that. No, it's this one here. This is supposedly a 6.7-pound perch right here that I bring. Do you see that now? On the Target Walleye newsletter?
No. Let me take a look.
The email? So it's not ice or walleye related. This is from Target Walleye. It's not ice or walleye related, but whoa, from Daniel's Fishing Experience, at Daniel's Fishing Experience, who said it completely inhaled his 9-centimeter Weston shad tees. European. It's actually from the Netherlands. This came from, of course. So I just think it's wild that, how there's similarities between the species, like a yellow perch and then this European perch. You could tell that they were all one species at one point when the continents were connected, I guess is my point. And they get huge. Like this is supposedly a 6.7-pound yellow perch, essentially.
That's weird. I don't see it on their front page right now, but
yeah, it's and again, there's some camera trickery here, but it's pretty impressive.
It's weird that I've never even heard of that before. Like Infishman usually does a pretty good job covering the world and that kind of stuff, but it's usually the pike or the zander that are coming up first.
Yeah. So I think it's super interesting how that how those fish in Europe are they're just tweaked a little bit,
Yeah. It tells a big story.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be fishing in Europe, too, and I didn't get to because of COVID. I was supposed to be...
Were you really?
Yeah, I was floating down the Danube. I was going to try and get to one of those farms where they're always breaking carp records because they plant them and feed them. You know what I'm talking about? Like Eastern Europe.
Right. Like a farm.
I was sniffing around like where I could get to one, just
nice.
to spend the day on the shoreline. But yeah, it is like I find that stuff fascinating. Like how, it's so obvious that those DNA paths sort of have crossed at some point, and then just made their way across the ocean, stayed landlocked.
Yeah.
Like it's all sitting right there for you to look at. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah,
but it seems like Europe just kind of gets forgotten here because it's so far away. But that's pretty amazing stuff because those zander are huge. Did you hear about the zander? I think maybe at some point we talked about this. The zander that were showing up in North Dakota.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, like what? Where somebody got some zander and dropped it in a reservoir in North Dakota?
There's no doubt in my mind that there's guys out there that are really trying to get that fish to take hold in North America.
Yeah. But what's the process of getting it from there to here?
And for the record, we don't advocate for that.
Yeah. Did they bring like eggs back?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Like, what is the process? That's a huge. If you're keeping a bunch of zander live in an aquarium or something, what are you using to get it from Europe to here?
How do you get through? How are you getting through customs?
Yeah. Are you risking jail time to get zander into a North Dakota reservoir? Is it that important to you?
That's pretty nuts. I hadn't even really thought about that before, how hard it must be to actually to get a fish, from another country.
They came over like the Bering Strait. They waited for the Bering Strait to freeze.
Yeah.
And then they drug it over a sled, and, they would cross Siberia.
Yeah. Yeah, the North Sea, they had to do it when the North Seas were calm.
Right. And they lost, it was started out with 100 men, and they ended up eating each other, and like one guy made it, and just kept walking until they got to South Dakota.
And thankfully, only a pair survived, but it was a pair.
He throws it into the reservoir, and then he dies of exhaustion on the shore, It's probably pretty epic.
That's the story of the American zander.
What a great film that would be.
Should do it. Maybe we make a movie or something. That's our next project.
Yeah.
So check this out, man. Dropping it on you right here, Pete. So we were just talking about this the last podcast. Again, from Target Walleye, U.S. boat sales reached a 13-year high in 2020. Freshwater fishing boats and pontoon boats, accounting for 50% of new power boats. So freshwater fishing boats and pontoon boats accounting for 50% of new power boats sold in 2020 are expected to be up 12% to 143,000 units.
Jeez Louise, that makes sense, though.
So we were just talking about that. And yeah, so people, with COVID, they're cooped up. They want to get out. The great thing about fishing, it is, you're pretty much social distancing when you do it. And people are like, I'm going. And I guess I'm just, again, I like talked about it last podcast, just shocked that there weren't people more spooked, I guess, with where the economy might be heading, and that they're like, no, I'm getting a boat. I mean, that's what I did after I kind of felt more confident with I was getting more work coming through.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you just bought a new boat. I'm in the process of buying a pontoon because I'm like, well, what better way to get the kids out and about, hoping to have one in the Mississippi. So that makes perfect sense. But you could tell just from the way the landings were last year, just the amount of people out and about, like outdoor stuff in general is insane right now, and it kind of is the silver lining, I think, in a lot of ways of this whole pandemic chaos. It's good to see people. I think it's just good for people's mental health in general. That's why this winter has been such a bummer for a lot of people, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, but it's a good thing. I mean, you always worry about someone fishing your fishing spot. I hate pulling up to a trout stream and there's a car parked on my bridge.
For sure.
But there's 900 miles of fishing stream down there that's publicly accessible. So, it's something that if people aren't fishing, the chances are tax money is not going to go to those resources and help sort of protect them and keep them healthy. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You kind of want to root for a lot of people to be out there. You just hope people are being respectful and doing it the right way, because there was a lot of ugly stories that came out this year of people abusing or in the boundary waters, like newbies all over the place, just leaving trash and destroying campsites and cutting down trees and stuff you can't do in those areas. You're supposed to leave it like it's never been touched by humans. So there's a lot of ugliness in the boundary waters, but at the same time, you're rooting for people to go up there because you want them to experience it. But I saw some people on portage trails up there that were in over their heads.
Really?
You're like, are you going in this far? Because there's a good shot I'm going to be reading about you in the paper 2 weeks from now.
Darwin?
What?
Darwinism in action?
Yeah, so in full action. Like, I saw people that had, heavy kayaks. They had just, duct tape a 2x4 to carry on their back.
Oh, boy.
And then I saw that same 2x4 with duct tape on it just laying on a trail on the way out,
Lord.
Just gave up on it, So it was kind of frustrating to see. And sometimes we'd be, I would go on some weeks and don't see anybody for 5 days. And I saw, dozens of people at where you come up to a portage trail just packing up their stuff. And it was crazy, but it's a good thing. In the long run, it's a good thing as long as people can learn how to follow the rules. Usually the Forest Service makes you watch a video of proper etiquette. And all that got thrown out this year. You didn't have to stop at a Forest Service. You could just apply online and head into the boundary waters. So it was kind of, I think it was a lack of education and maybe just a lot more just kids going up together. You're not supposed to have more than, I think, 10 or 12 people on a campsite. And they were just throwing keggers essentially without the keg.
Wow.
Campsites to make it enough noise for the whole lake can hear them, and it kind of defeats the purpose of it, So it's good and it's bad, but I like to see that outdoor, the outdoors in general is storming ahead. It's a good thing.
It's kind of funny, and I agree. What's kind of funny, and you're talking to me through Skype right now. What's kind of fun is that sometimes your signal will go, and you become like digital Pete.
Right.
You're like Android digital Pete, and then what's funny is you slow down, and then the connection picks back up, and then it's like it speeds you up a little bit. So then you become like fast talking.
Catches up with real time.
Yeah.
Does it do that when you post the podcast too? Is that how it's recorded?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
because you break up sometimes too. But
it's because it's through, I'm through the call. But no, it's good on my end because I have a straight connection through the software. But I'm.
Yeah, I noticed it when I was listening to it. My quality was a little bit worse, but it's so freaking convenient.
Oh, no. I think this is the way to go. I think about like how we did this in the past, and oh my Lord, have mercy.
And generally I don't have anything worth saying that anybody here. So if for some reason
that is nonsense.
If you were to lose my signal, nobody's worse for the wear.
Absolutely not true. So before we, I want to wrap up the Target Walleye thing here real quick. So that's the news from Target Walleye. Brett McComas, I've talked with Brett on a podcast before. Brett, we want to do another podcast with you. I reached out to Brett on Instagram, and it's like crickets. And I'm hoping it's crickets because he's got such a huge following now. And it's just like there's probably a lot of people that bother him on direct message or whatever it's called on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah, Brett, if you're interested in, or if you know anybody that can get a hold of Brett listening to this podcast, tell him we're interested in doing a podcast with him because I like the guy. And just be good to talk ice fishing with him right now and anything else that...
He runs a great website too,
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like they call it Target Walleye, but it doesn't focus on walleyes, does it? I mean, that's the
in the winter it becomes more like more ice fishing, like everything kind of everything related ice fishing.
Anything you can catch through the ice, right? Yeah.
So I got to tell you a funny story here, real quick, Pete. So as fishermen, we've been doing this forever, fishing for as long as we can really remember. Night crawlers have been such an important part of that experience, and catching night crawlers. If you've never caught night crawlers before, it's really not that hard. If you just, before nightfall, just douse your lawn with a ton of water, and then at night go out with a headlamp, with a red light. They don't get as spooked with a red light on there. And go out and you just all these night crawlers will just be out. Their holes have gotten flooded, right? So they have to come out, and because you've doused the whole lawn with water, so they come out and you could just grab them right there because they're fully outstretched most times, and you grab them. You got to be quick sometimes, but that red light will help you.
Yeah, they're shockingly fast.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
You never think like a night crawler would be fast necessarily, but these suckers are fast, right?
Right.
So we're going to start lake sturgeon fishing here at some point on the St. Croix, and your primary bait for doing that. Is just gobbed up night crawlers. But you find in the winter it's harder and harder to have night crawlers. It's, to find them, to find night crawlers. They're selling little waxy worms and little red worm, blood worms. But full-on night crawlers become harder to find in the wintertime, right?
Yeah, try dousing your lawn in Minnesota in the winter and see how that works for night crawlers.
Exactly. So
great for hockey.
Not so good for night crawlers. So I thought it would be a good idea, in the fall to start collecting night crawlers while they're still in area bait shops, and then put them in like a worm farm. Start raising earthworms so that, or night crawlers, so that I'd have a supply for ice fishing. I wouldn't have to worry that we're running out, right?
We did in our youth. So. The problem is that just recently going down and checking on my night crawlers, making sure that everybody's doing okay, making sure that the bedding is moist enough and everything. Well, I'm like, there's a dead night crawler right on the top there. I'm gonna have to take him out, and then I start digging, and then I see another dead night crawler, and I start digging a little bit, and there's another dead night crawler a little bit underneath the bedding. Then I see another dead night crawler. All of them, dude, with a few exceptions, are dead, dude. And I've been keeping them in cool, the right moisture. There's food in the bedding itself. I have no idea what went wrong, but dude, all of them gone. For the most part. Did you do research, or was there instructions with the?
Yeah, I just read the instructions from the Frable, worm bedding. The instructions on how to take care of night crawlers just from the instructions from the Frable,
So do you think it's just temperature?
I don't know if like my room, it's down. I had it down in the basement in my office. I don't know if the room got too cold. I kept it at 50. You know, maybe
Yeah,
I should have had it.
I don't think you can be too cold.
Well, that's what I mean. Like I actually have 2
fridge.
packs, and yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what happened to them. But
So
they are.
You knew the temp was hanging around 50 though, huh?
Yeah, I set the thermostat to 50 in there, in my room.
God, that sucks. Because now, when we go sturgeon fishing, we're going to be on a mad scramble across the entire state.
I've got 2. The only thing, the problem is I only have 2. I have 2. So basically, I have 2 dozen night crawlers is all I have left. And what was happening is, how I found out about this is that I was going to transfer those 2 dozen into my worm farm. And I was like, no, they're all dead. This is a failed.
You mean your death farm?
My death farm.
That sucks. You had such high hopes, you know. We're like, I've got it figured out, man. You sent me a picture. You're like, I thought it
was a sound setup. I'm like, dude, I've had worms before. Like I've had night crawlers before. I've raised night crawlers before, and it was. I mean,
what kind of bedding is it? Is it like that linty kind of stuff?
It's newspaper, shredded newspaper that supposedly has, worm food in it. So I was getting ready to have to, like, I kept notes of how, that it was when that bedding, when I added it, when I added it to the farm, like the new bedding, the date and everything, and when I was so that I'd know when I'd need to change it, right?
Yeah, right.
I was right. No, I already failed.
Oh, that
so
sucks.
super disappointing by that.
So how bold do you get now when you find crawlers? You going to buy enough crawlers to go fishing with and replenish the farm?
No way, man. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm out of the night crawler farming business.
That's heartbreaking to me. You realize when we get to catfishing season, we have a similar need. At least you can find them then, I guess.
Well, the bullheads is where, I mean, if we're doing flathead, it's the bullhead deal, but...
Well, how do you catch a bullhead?
You're right. You're right. But it's just in the winter, I wanted to have the ability to, just not. I wanted to have my own night crawlers that I was just kind of raising that I wouldn't have to worry, be dependent. I could store them, and I wouldn't have to be dependent on bait shops, And that's just.
Can I encourage you not to give up yet? Maybe you got a bad batch of crawlers, or
maybe bad worm bedding. I'll try it again.
Talk to some, maybe do a little online research and get some advice.
Maybe people out in our audience know what I did wrong. I mean, it says keep the bedding saturated. It was saturated.
Yeah.
You don't want any moisture you don't want any standing water on the bottom.
Right.
And it wasn't like that. I thought I had I thought it was saturated well. Wasn't too crazy. Moist, I thought the moisture was right. I don't know. I don't know if they just starved. Maybe I was supposed to be feeding them. I did buy, food, but supposedly the bedding already had food in it. Right. So that's what I was planning on. I was just like going to just change the bedding out and then
say that
them.
Crawlers you find this time of year already seemed doomed when you get them.
Yeah,
I mean, like by
I thought about that too.
This time they always seem like they're on their way out because they obviously came from somewhere else. It took a while to get here, so who knows if that's part of the ball game too? Maybe you were doomed before you get going, but that sucks.
Yeah,
that sucks.
So, trying to wrap up here a little. There's 2 items that I did want to just quickly go over here, Mr. Wagner. Did you say that you found an article or something about how ice fishing equipment is getting out of control or something, or unfair, or it's getting so
Well, yeah. So there was an interesting article. This is in the Duluth News Tribune. You can check it out yourself if you want. And the name of the article is a bit long-winded. As ice fishing gets easier because the technology, can fish withstand the onslaught? And I find it to be an interesting question just because obviously when you're ice fishing, you're restricted by your movement and your ease of actually just getting a lure in the water. But these days, the amount of technology people use to find these fish is getting insane. I'll just read a little bit of it. Ice fishermen have never had it so good. From pull-behind wheelhouses that are warm to 70 degrees and feature large flat-screen TVs and kitchenettes, to sonar that allows anglers to see sideways in a 360-degree circle, which I didn't even know that was something. I guess they're just talking about a regular.
Yeah, they're talking about Hummingbird's 360 imaging.
Right.
Yeah, Hummingbird's got 360 imaging, which is like it's a transducer that it scans in a circle, and so it's like there's that, and then also the biggest thing is this live scope technology or Panoptics. Garmin's Panoptics is dude. Have you ever seen Garmin's Panoptics? So that in ice fishing is. I've seen it in open water. I'm like, and I've actually thought, I'm like, gosh, this is, if we're going to talk about like what's something that's like almost cheating, I'm like, oh man, dude, it's crazy, man.
And the image is great here. It's like, it says Gary Rutherford of Pengilly, Minnesota. So he's sitting there. He's got two big screen TVs in front of it. It looks like he's in a cabin, He's got a remote control that moves his underwater camera. He's got 3 different cameras and 3 big screen television monitors, plus a small monitor with a camera. And, if you combine this with the nice ice houses and you combine it with cell phones in general, people saying, hey, I'm catching fish here, I can, it's easy to get other people on the same spot you were if you want to. It's not a battle anymore if you have the money and time you want to put into it. But I guess the question is it a danger to the fisheries? Because I would say for the most part, ice fishermen are keep them and fry them type of fishermen.
Right.
Don't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's one thing that kind of bothers me too, we've talked about in the past, is there's kind of this almost like a 1960s, back in the 1960s, that kind of era, even into the 70s before catch and release, like people would just show pictures of like just slaughtered largemouth bass that they caught in a day down in a southern reservoir. That was like standard. You just show, look at all the fish I've killed,
Right.
And that's still kind of seems to be happening in ice fishing, And granted, when you talk about pan fishing, it's, there's more of them, and but even then, you're still, when you do that, you're not, selective harvest or catch and release, I still think is very important, and it just seems like in ice fishing, it's a little less, the catch and release part of it anyway, seems that it's more about put them in a bucket, right. And instead of just like, I'm out here, I'm really just, I like the sport of it, and so that's kind of bothered me. So I think it's, I think it's a concern, It's definitely a concern. The technology has gotten unbelievable here, lately.
And it's only going to get better. Jason Mitchell, they interview him in this one. I think seen him on Target Walleye before, and this is a pretty good quote from his end. He says, every time something new comes out every few years, it seems like we go through this, said outdoor media personality Jason Mitchell, who got to start guiding on Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Underwater cameras, should we make them illegal? Vexillars, should we make them illegal? Now it's a side scan sonar, should we make them illegal? All as I know, at the end of the day, you can't make the fish bite, which is, it's a valid point.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. And I'm kind of on probably more the side of, just relax and, there might be just this kind of, just a knee-jerk reaction to some of this technology that it's gonna harm fisheries. Maybe that's being too sensitive. But I do think that that there needs to be more of a, I don't know, and maybe there is. Maybe it's. I just think it really needs to be kind of a mantra that you still need to practice catch and release, selective harvest. Especially when in winter, fish can get so packed up in an area, and you can just deplete them very quickly. We've
all seen it before. Like, everybody hears of a hot bite, and you can fish out a hot bite,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're going back to the same spot 3 times in one day, and you get 30 ice houses, and within a week, that whole thing is just gone.
Yeah, and And you see it in winter in particular. I mean, I've seen it on the little lake that I live on, where it's like all of a sudden you have an encampment, and they can devastate a population because in the winter everything's packed up. Like in crappies and bluegills, they go to the base in the deepest area, especially if it's a smaller body of water. There's only so many places they can be, and you can just hammer a population of fish that'll take quite a few years before they rebound. I wish there was more of a catch and release ethic than a catch and eat ethic. Right. Because, I could just go to the grocery store to eat fish. I'm going out there I want to catch, I don't care if it's even a crappie. I want to catch I want to catch a big crappie. I want to catch a big sunfish. And when people go out there and they've have that mentality of I'm out here to keep fish, and you have more of that mentality that arrives in the ice fishing season. I think there's people that just they ice fish, they don't even open water fish. Right. I mean, and so this new technology, I could see where there's some potential there. I just think we maybe need to, instead of having more regulations, we need to work on more of developing a philosophy, more of an ethic, more of a catch and release ethic in ice fishing.
Right. Because, even if just catch enough that you're going to eat that night, people have the mentality they need to fill up the freezer because God forbid they're going to starve to death. But you're going to go fishing again next week.
I know.
Maybe keep enough in the freezer to get you through the next fishing round if you didn't catch anything. And I'm guilty of not keeping fish because I'm not a normal fish eater. More of just a walleye thing for me. But I love having a camera down an ice hole. Just from a biologist standpoint, I find that so fascinating just to actually see what's going on down there or how a fish approaches a bite. And actually, when you're feeling that tap, what's happening, that makes it feel that way.
Yeah.
What? Well, how am I getting a hook set? It makes you a smarter fisherman. But it's different for everyone. It really comes down to ingraining in people's DNA that, if you just keep a couple fish every time, those fish will be there next time you come back versus I'm going to grab as much as I can, put it in my freezer, and then try and figure out a different spot to fish next week,
For sure. All right. The last topic that I just needed to talk to you about. This is mind-blowing, dude. And this has nothing. This is what we want to do at another fishing podcast. So, when you go out fishing with your buddy, you're not always just out there talking about fishing. You know what I mean? You talk about life. You're talking about what's going on or news, So we want to have that aspect of another fishing podcast. That needs to be an aspect of what we're doing here, right? So Pete and I are both nerds when it comes to space stuff, right? And so, Pete, did you hear this? Okay. There is, and I wish I had the article. I'm just going off memory here, okay? But you could probably pull it up on the internet here. But this is mind-blowing. The top Harvard astronomer, okay? So Harvard, what? Harvard is the best university in the world? Is it not the top university, the best university in the world? I mean, it's in the top five. Top five, right?
Sure.
So the top,
especially in astrophysics, they're right up there too.
The top astronomer at Harvard has just wrote a book. It's coming out end of this month, I believe. It's called Extraterrestrial. This is the top astronomer at Harvard. Coming out with a book. Do you remember, I believe it was 2017, there was that object that came ripping into our solar system, rounded the sun, and then bolted right back out? Do you remember hearing about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that guy...
Absolutely. I mean, it was the first observed out of solar system object. It was widely agreed upon.
Widely agreed upon. This object was from another solar system. Okay? From another star system. Okay? So this top Harvard astronomer is saying that that object was extraterrestrial. True. He's saying it was extraterrestrial in that book that he's coming out with end of this month.
And they couldn't get a direct view of the object it's a fascinating thing, but they could somehow sort of figure out the dimensions of it. And at the time, and you'd sent me a link to the book. Boy, this guy's jumping right on it with the book too. But, he made an argument about it wasn't shedding ice like a comet or anything that gets close to the sun will generally shed and have a tail. It's a pretty standard thing for things that are moving. And then also the trajectory of how it sped up was abnormal. There's always two sides to these coins because there's different scientists arguing for different things. And the weird part is with this one, that you don't get a direct view of it, which is frustrating and fascinating at the same time. It's a dark object a long ways away. So you really can't take a picture of it and say, this is what it is. But they still have ways of trying to figure out what it is. But it's an interesting idea. Just the idea that they were able to figure out trajectory-wise that it came from outside the solar system, Yeah,
he's basically saying that he believes it to be a piece of extraterrestrial space debris.
Right.
So a part of a broken ship or a broken ship, alien space. Think about this, what we're talking about here. And this guy, like I said, this is the top Harvard astronomer saying this. All right, this isn't some crazy, nut saying this. And so he thinks that it's the most reasonable, maybe that's not the word, but plausible explanation.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense any other way to him.
Right.
And the shape of the object, how the light was hitting it, all of these things, how it was turning, it just makes zero sense for it to be anything other than something that was artificially made.
Yeah, it was, and the other thing, it was like a cigar shape with a reddish hue, which is not a common thing as just a natural space object,
Right.
And this is a guy that rubbed elbows with Stephen Hawking. I mean, like, he's worked with the best of the best on this stuff, And I know we love drumming this stuff up because it feels like we're living in a time right now where something like that is going to get exposed. It can happen any day. There's all kinds of interesting stuff out there right now.
Yeah.
But this guy, it's going to be an interesting book. I'm definitely going to give it a read because these guys know their stuff, and he's not a guy that's sort of, you can't take what he has to say lightly. You got to flush it out and see what's there,
Yeah, I just thought that was remarkable. I had to bring that up. I just read about it recently, and I've said this before, but I really think this decade there's going to be a lot of revelations. I get this feeling like within our lifetime, I believe, and I've talked to you about this before, but I do believe within our lifetime we are going to come in contact, or we're going to have confirmation of extraterrestrial intelligent life.
And I don't know whether to say I hope you're right or I hope you're wrong, because I can go either way.
Well, because and this is what I'll say. Okay, I think there's more and more. There's strong evidence. There's actually, what was that documentary name that I had you watch recently?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I can't remember. It's very good, though. I wish I remember right now. But there's more and more like top government officials that are talking, saying things that would just blow your mind about experiences they've had or knowledge of stuff that's being hidden. People Senator Harry Reid, this guy's a senator, very distinguished senator, believes that we have we actually have in our possession extraterrestrial objects made from,
He was part of the documentary. It was called The Phenomenon.
The Phenomenon, yeah. So watch this documentary called The Phenomenon. You can get it on Netflix. It's about UFOs. It's the best documentary that I've seen on the UFO phenomenon. I think it's a pretty darn compelling case that they make for this being real.
Reality. A lot of them get off track, but you know, I don't know which way to go when this subject comes up because I want it so bad.
Yeah, I just
you're more confident than me, but I'm always like on the side of I love the exploration of that. It seems like every single fishing trip we have usually finishes with this discussion as the sun goes down. You know,
I know.
Like,
so that's how
it's our closer.
Yeah, this is our closer, and that's how we're going to close this podcast. So, Pete, podcast number 2. I can't wait till we have 1,000 podcasts under our belt, bud.
Oh my God! Think of how old we'll be. That's crazy. Let's just take it one podcast at a time. But I am going to go fishing next week, so we'll see if we can figure out a way to meet podcasts. It'll probably be low quality, Pete, at some point, but I won't mind checking in, letting you guys know. By next Sunday, I'll have 3 days of ice fishing for lake trout under my belt, so it would be kind of fun to check in and see you know, how things are going, or if I'm still alive, or if wolves finally have taken me down. And you know,
I would love.
UFO.
I think it would be exciting to do a remote podcast in the deep winter wilderness with you. So if that is possible, if you can, you know, finagle it, let's do it.
There's no phone service anywhere I'm going to be, but there's Wi-Fi at the cabin. We'll see how good it is, and we'll check in and let you know what's going on. And in the meantime, you try and get yourself out, get some fresh air.
All right, sounds good, and we'll leave it at that. Pete, have a great trip. And we will we'll talk to you. We'll do our podcast. I guess I've got some. Here's the thing too. Like I've got some interviews too that where you're going on your jaunts. I've got some interviews with some guys too that we're planning on doing with podcasting. You know, for this show and so.
All right. Well, good luck filling these shoes.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to be easy, but yeah. But.
Thank you.
But it would be fun to do a remote podcast and with you.
We'll see what happens. Either way, everybody have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time.